Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Hello. Today I am going to be sharing with you 10 scary, creepy, dark children's books that I think the children in your life are going to love. Whether it be your own children, children in your classroom because you're a teacher, your grandchildren, nieces, nephews, siblings. I mean, any young person will get a kick out of these books. Now, here's what's interesting. In my life, I have noticed that there comes a point where kids are into like creepy books or like are into scary stories. I've had that, maybe the child never gets there. I'm not saying every child, but I do notice that there seems to be a point in a kid's life where they're curious about the dark, like a scary story. I remember my dad entertaining me and my siblings with scary stories, and it was like we were just sucked in. We wanted to know like campfire stories, that kind of thing. And so I think it's a developmental thing, but I also think it's just a curiosity thing. I think it's a natural curiosity that we all have. We want to see the icky, sticky, creepy, scary, fearful things and know what that is all about. So I have 10 books for you. If you're new to my channel, then hi, I'm Shelly. I really love books and reading, and I hope you enjoy these books that I have for you. I think all of them are great. And we'll talk about the varying degrees of scary. Oh my goodness, Shelly. If you like the vibe, I would encourage you to subscribe and stick around. And without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I'm going to go from least unsettling to most unsettling. In terms of least unsettling, there is a genre of dark books that that use like darker illustrations of scary things to talk about fear and confronting fear. And there is a classic story that uses and does this trope or this theme absolutely perfectly, and that is There's a Nightmare in My Closet by Mercer. Now, this is a classic children's book. Let me see when it was actually published. So this was, I think, first published in 1968, and I'm shocked that my library still has a copy. It means that it still circulates, and I could tell that this book is very well worn. Where you would turn the pages, there are little rips in the page. It just means that the book has been read a lot and loved by a lot of readers. So it's the story of, and it's told in the past tense, there used to be a nightmare in my closet. And it's this little boy who is sort of fearfully looking at his closet. And then one day he confronts his nightmare. And what happens is that the nightmare is more scared of him than the little boy is of the nightmare. And the nightmare is personified as this monster. And it's actually, if you were to boil down Monsters, Inc., the Pixar film Monsters, Inc., to the barest bones of the story, it would be Mercer Mayer's story. Very much like the doors are not portals, but it's sort of like there is this non-scary monster living in the closet, and really it's nothing to be scared of at all. And it's delightful. The illustrations are delightful. The color palette is stunning. I love the teal and the orange and the black and the beige, and she really sticks with those colors, and I adore this book. Really a short, sweet, perfectly packaged way to be like, look, if you're scared of something, there's really nothing to be afraid of. And it's a playful way to tell that story. Another less playful, more serious book, but really has the same kind of message, is The Dark by Lemony Snicket, and it's illustrated by Jon Klassen. This is, again, about a little boy who actually is dressed in very similar pajamas as I'm looking around, as the Mercer Mayer book. It's like this onesie, and also does the same thing where it has a very limited color palette. I think Jon Klassen just uses a couple of colors in this book to illustrate the entire thing, and it works. There is a lot of like black spaces, like white spaces, but the opposite, they're all darkness, because it's talking about being afraid of the dark. And the little boy talks about all the different ways that he is afraid of the dark and all of the different spaces in his house that he feels overwhelmed by the dark. And then the Lemony Snicket gives the dark a voice. And so the dark speaks back to the little boy and it gives some useful advice and also in some ways like defends himself as the dark, talking about like his own importance, and if there was no dark, then it would be light all the time, and that can be its own kind of problem. And then the dark lends a helping hand, so to speak, to the little boy, and not only helps him be less afraid of the dark, but also gives him a light bulb so that there is light in the darkness during dark moments in his life. Mostly like literal dark moments, like when he's going to sleep. So it's a very, I think, clever tale on darkness. And again, it's about confronting your fear of a very specific thing. Rather than a nightmare in the closet, it is the actual dark, which, to be honest, was my biggest fear growing up. I was so scared of the dark. And so to give the darkness a tangible voice, I think is a really clever way to approach a scary topic. Continuing on our theme of fear, we have The Visitor by Antje Damm. And this is a more darkly illustrated book. I have a couple of mostly more darkly illustrated books rather than darkly messaged books, if that makes sense. So this has like more scary illustrations that I think will draw a young reader in rather than a scary message. But it has scary images because the older lady in this book is scared of everything. She's so fearful of every single thing. She doesn't even want to go to sleep in her own home. And then one day a paper airplane comes into her home, and she meets a little neighbor child, and that little neighbor child literally brings light into her life. And so the beginning of this book is very, very dark, and it really is, the atmosphere is mirroring how the main character feels inside. And then as the book goes on, you see that this young person is literally giving her light in her life, both on the page, but it's also helping our main character overcome her fear and really enjoy life more, like hold life more lightly. And so it is really beautifully done. I love the illustrations. I really love both the darker illustrations and the lighter illustrations. Just beautiful, and with a beautiful message, and just like what friendship can bring in one's life and overcoming the fear of essentially being alone. That is really what the message is all about. And I loved it. So good, and such wonderful illustrations. My next book is I Hate School by Jeanne, Willis, and Tony Ross. I love this book, and more than me, my kids loved this book, especially when they started school. They went from being at home with me for the most part to going to school, and so there was some reluctance on their part to go to school. Now we're all like happy to go to school and also happy to have days off. But so there's a balance there. But during those moments when my kids were really little and struggling to get in a good groove with school, sometimes instead of bucking their attitude, like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way, or trying to, school is really great, like trying all these different ways to make school a better, happier place for them. Instead, it's just like, let's just confront the idea and just say that you hate school, and then we can see how your school experience is similar or maybe dissimilar to the young protagonist in this book. And what's funny is that she has little devil's horns going that are sticking out of her hat. And so that's an indication of what you'll see later on in the book. And so as you go, this little protagonist is talking about all the ways she hates school and all of the ways that it's horrible. And it sounds horrible. They feed her worms. They make her do terrible things. In the background of the first page, the school is on fire, which is indicative of how she feels about school. I mean, school is this icky, ucky, soggy, messy, terrible place to be for our young protagonist. And it is shown in the illustrations. And that's what's so fun about this, is that you get a sense, or you start to get a sense, that school isn't actually as dark as the protagonist is making it out to be. It's really the way that she is perceiving school to be. So I really, really loved this book. I loved it when I read it with my kids, and even as I was pulling it off the shelves for this video, my son, one of my sons, looked at it and he was like, "Can I look at it before you talk about it on camera?" And I was like, "Sure." And he himself are pointing out all of the things that are dark, you know, about this school that this protagonist claims to hate, which is just so fun. And all the teachers are depicted as monsters or frogs or, you know, wretched, sort of icky, sticky creatures. And it is just a delight. It's an absolute delight. I have a discarded library copy. Mine have a couple of ripped pages, but it just means that this book has been well circulated and well loved and still in good enough condition for me and my family to read together. Sticking with more of a darkly illustrated book rather than an actually dark messaged or even talking about fear type of book, a darkly illustrated book is The Dangerous Alphabet by Neil Gaiman, and it's illustrated by Grimley. Chris Grimley. Wow. Okay. I wonder if that's his real name. I really don't know. So this is an adventure story, and it is an ABC Darian book. So it goes through the alphabet and tells you this adventure story using the alphabet in order to help like move the plot along. And I really think that this is very much inspired by Edward Gorey. Not only are the illustrations a nod to Gorey's style in some ways. Edward Gorey mostly only did ink and paper. He didn't really color illustrate a lot of his books. This is color illustrated, but it also is a nod because he also, like Edward Gorey, also has done ABC books. So it goes something like this. A is for always, that's where we embark. B is for boat pushing off in the dark. C is a way that we find and look. D is for diamonds, the bait on the hook. And so you have this rhyme scheme that makes it really easy to read. I think it's told in iambic pentameter, so it has that almost like clip motion, like short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long. Anyways, making it even easier to read. And then on every page, not only is it like the ABC going through the alphabet, but the illustrations hearken to A things, B things, C things, D things. And so if you look at like the D page, for example, there's a dog, there's a duck, there's a dagger, there's dynamite. And so it's just a whole heck of a lot of fun to flip through the pages, identify the items that start with the letter that they are celebrating on that page, and also has this sort of like creepy, like darkly illustrated style to boot. And so it's just a whole heck of a lot of fun. My next book is Alfred's Book of Monsters. This is a meta book if I saw one myself. So this is by Sam Streed, not to be confused with Sam Steed, who is a book reviewer for the New York Post, I think. Anyways, Sam Streed. So this book is about Alfred, who the first page is this like really creepy illustration, and you realize that it's Alfred reading a creepy book and then being interrupted from his creepy reading to go sit to tea, which is always delightful. But Alfred does not like delightful things. He just wants to get back to like the creepy, icky, ucky things in life and get back to his book and ghosts and witches and all of that. And every time he goes back to his book, yet again, he is being called to have tea. So he finally wises up and decides to invite all of these icky, ucky monsters to tea time. And that way it's sort of the best of the adult world, meaning the adult world of imposing tea time on this young man, and Alfred's world, which is his love for monsters. And so for him, it's this like perfect combination of both. And it's really a delightful book. It really celebrates, you know, the love of dark things. In that, like, it's nice to see a character who is enjoying something that is like, you know, creepy, dark, weird, you know, and in that way, it's like, it's okay to like that kind of stuff and to be delighted by it, because here this protagonist is in love with that stuff as well. And so it's just a lot of fun, and the illustrations are quite a bit of fun as well. The next book is one of my favorites of this whole batch of creepy books, and it's the Creepy Crayon. Now, it's written by Reynolds and illustrated by Peter Brown, and there are several books in this series. So we have the Creepy Crayon, we have the Creepy Carrots, and we have the Creepy Pair of Underwear. How clever is that, y'all? How clever is that? The great thing about the Creepy Crayon is that it references the Creepy Carrots and the Creepy Pair of Underwear in this book, because it's the third in the series, but I really like this one. I need to go back and read the other ones, but this one is fantastic. So what I like about it is that it is about Jasper, who is not doing great in math and encounters a crayon who can help him, who is willing to help him with some of the things that he is struggling with academically. And all of a sudden, he's getting Jasper, who was at first struggling, is now getting A+ on his math homework, on his spelling tests. And then all of a sudden there's a turn, and Jasper is now being controlled by his purple crayon. And so, you know, the purple crayon is dictating what he wants. He's becoming more and more demanding. He's becoming more and more clingy. He even writes like "you and I forever" on his backpack. I think that's it. He also writes on the mirror, the creepy crayon writes, "you need me" on the mirror. Let me see what he writes on the backpack. Jasper and crayon forever. It's fantastic. And of course, Jasper is doing the best he can to get rid of this stalkerish, creepy, clingy crayon. And what ends up happening is that, you know, Jasper gets most improved student for that year, which is so sweet. But then he decides what he wants to do is to flush it down the toilet, to flush the crayon down the toilet. And with that, the crayon is no more, only to possibly enter the life of another quiet, demure victim. So this is fantastic. It is so funny. It's a funny book, and really worth a read, really worth a gander, especially if you know, I don't know, I like that trope. It's like, you know, I'm seemingly innocent and I'm entering your life, but now I'm going to turn into this wretched monster trying to take over and, you know, sort of sucking the life out of you little by little like a vampire. It's just great. Okay, the next book, these last three are actually unsettling in a way. The first one is an actual cautionary tale, and I've talked about it on my channel before, and it's The Spider and the Fly. It is written, or this book is based off of a Victorian poem by Mary Howitt, and it is illustrated by Tony DiTerlizzi. Now, this is a completely black and white book. There's no color that enters it, and I think that really adds to the creepy atmosphere of it all. But it's about not letting flattery and I don't know, like your own vainness get you to make choices that you will eventually regret. And so, of course, this fly is being flattered and complimented by a spider, and the spider doesn't have the best of intentions. And you see these other ghost bugs around saying, you know, don't fall for it. Keep your head about you. Don't fall for his flattery. And what do you know? It does not have a happy ending. It does not have a happy ending. Rather, what happens is that the poor little fly ends up being one of the spider's victims because she falls for his sweet words. And so it ends up being just fantastic. I love this book. I have featured it in several videos before, but it is one of my favorites. I bought this myself because I love it so much, and it's one that I revisit every year, and I do not regret it because I love it so much. This next book is one of my favorites from a author-illustrator duo that I just adore so much, and it is Heckedy Peg. This is written by Audrey Wood, and it is illustrated by Don Wood. Great duo, and this is one of their many exceptional books. So this is actually, it reads like a folk tale, and it is based on a 16th century game that children still play today. So it feels very fairy tale-esque. For example, there's this mother who has 7 children, and her children's names are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is just like furthering this feeling that we are in some sort of fairy tale. And it reads very much like a Grimm's fairy tale. It's a little bit dark, which is why it's included on this list, and one of the reasons why I love it so much. So the mother decides to go to the market, and she asks each of her children what they would like from the market. And they each have their very specific item. And before she goes, she says, don't play with the fire, of course, and don't let anybody in. Well, while they are gone, this old woman comes in. Oh, it's always the creepy old woman that comes in or comes by. And she says, I'm Heckedy Peg. I've lost my leg. Let me in. And they tell her that they can't let her in. And eventually she says, if you'll let me light my pipe, I'll give you a sack of gold. And so they end up letting her in, which is, of course, their mistake. And so she ends up changing them into all of these different items. Let me see what she actually changes them into. It says Monday became bread, Tuesday became pie, Wednesday became milk, Thursday became porridge, Friday became fish, Saturday became cheese, and Sunday became roast rib. And so she changes all of them and takes them away to takes them far, far away from their home and goes to her hut in the woods. Of course, it's a hut in the woods. And the mother comes back, and she cannot find anyone, even though she can't find any of her children in her home, even though she does have all of the items that each of them wanted. And a blackbird tells her that Heckedy Peg, who lost her leg, they let her in. And so now she has to seek out Heckedy Peg's home. And so, yeah, she's scary, huh? And so as Heckedy Peg is about to sit down to eat, she's about to eat these children who have been transformed into food, the mother is at her door, and the mother is like, let me in, let me in. And Heckedy Peg is like, no, your shoes are too dirty. So the mother takes off her shoes. She says, no, your socks are too dirty. So she takes off her socks. She says, no, your feet are too dirty. So the mother pretends to cut off her own feet. And then she lets her in. And then while the mother is in Heckedy Peg's home, what she does is that Heckedy Peg says, you have to identify all of your children correctly. And if you do identify them all correctly, then you can have your children back. Otherwise, they will be my supper. And so based on what the children wanted from the market, like a knife for butter and so on, what is it? Brett wants bread for butter, a knife for pie. That's what I meant. A knife for pie, a pitcher for milk. And so she can identify her children based on what they wanted from the market, what food item they are. I hope that makes sense. And she gets them all back. And then what? No.
That art page.
Oh, this page?
Oh.
Mm-hmm. We're eating. And then they chase the witch out of town, and Heckedy Peg jumps off a bridge, never to be seen again. So it's a fantastic book with amazing illustrations, and I just love the dark tone of it all. Do you want to look at it? Okay, go sit down over there and look at it. My final book, and I think the creepiest of all of them, is Chris Van Allsburg's The Sweetest Fig, which is so unsettling. It is so, so unsettling. So it is about a disgruntled dentist who ends up helping out a woman with her teeth, and the woman cannot pay him, but pays him in figs. And so that night, the dentist is just the worst. His name is Bilbo, and he is the absolute worst. And so he ends up eating the fig and deciding that it is the sweetest fig he's ever tasted, and goes to sleep. And that morning, and I think the old lady warns him saying that the figs are magical, but of course he doesn't believe her. And he has this little adorable dog that he doesn't treat that great. And so he goes to sleep that night and has a dream and wakes up and he realizes that the dream came true. So he's walking around in his underwear and the Eiffel Tower looks like it's made of rubber. So from there, he's like, oh, I should have believed the old woman from the beginning. And now I should really like train myself to dream dreams in which Bilbo is like rich and lavish and has this amazing life so that will come true. Well, he decides that the fig won't last forever and he should just go ahead and eat it. And he's like hypnotizing in his, or like, self-talk saying that he should be, that he should, sleep and dream about having riches and all of that. So instead, what happens is that his sweet little dog eats the fig. And of course, the man is really upset and frustrated. And the next morning, he realizes that he's not sleeping in his bed. He's actually underneath his bed. And what in the world is he doing? And as he is about to yell out, saying, what's going on here? All he can do is bark. And the unsettlingness is that the dog and Bilbo switch places because the dog dreamt that he was his master that night, and now they've switched places. And so it's quite unsettling in its own way, and I love it for that. I love it for that. And Chris Van Allsburg has just some wonderfully dark yet sort of silly, and just, not silly. He has dark books that are often like poignant or have a really good twist in them. But this is definitely one of my favorites from him. And that's it. Those are my 10. Let me know all of your favorite creepy, dark children's books. I would love to know. And yeah, thanks for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye!
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.